All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of It Happened to Me, brought to you by thisweirdworld.com. This week on the show, we are going to have my good friend Lisa. Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Hey, fine. How are you?
Doing great. I'm very excited to have you on the show. My understanding is you have some pretty interesting stories to share with us today.
I do.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you take it away. I know that we're changing your name for your protection, which is pretty cool, I think. It's my first official
Let's
name
make it
change.
mysterious.
So I guess if you want to tell people a little bit about maybe where this happened, you don't have to give any specifics, and then let's get into
Sure.
your stories.
All right. Sorry if I clear my voice a lot. My allergies are wearing me out right now.
I understand it's that time in Texas. Everything's trying to come back after the winter.
So I guess I can start with how I've always been sensitive to things. Since I was little, I would hear things like somebody say something and then turn around to my mom or dad, depending on a male or female voice, and ask them, excuse me, what'd you say? And they're like, we weren't saying nothing. One of them, I think I was probably 10. We were walking the parking lot out of a restaurant, and I heard a woman say, watch out. I didn't know what that meant. And we got into a car wreck later on, an easy car wreck, simple car wreck. But we got into a car wreck. So it was kind of weird, but we didn't think anything of it. I've always been able to tell when somebody walks in a room, the pressure changes in my ears. So I'll turn to look and see someone's coming. Sometimes nobody shows up, but it feels like somebody's standing there. I don't get a bad feeling. It's just a different feeling.
Yeah, everybody knows that feeling of someone kind of standing next to you or behind you. Even when you can't see them, you know they're there.
Exactly. My brother, the same way. My brother's always been very sensitive. Trying to think, there's a lot of things. I guess the main ones I can focus on. Well, when I was a teenager, I was about 14, 15, volunteering at a place because I wasn't old enough to work yet. And I had someone pull my hair. I was at a vet clinic. And when I turned around, nobody was there. The dogs were all staring at a particular corner of the room. And everybody stopped barking. Everything just stopped. So I started crying because it scared me. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me. I was 14 at the time.
I'm sure.
So I ran out, asked everybody. They're like, nobody's in there but you. So it probably about a month, my mom would have come to work with me because I was afraid to go by myself because I could never understand who. And it was like not just a little yank. It's like someone just grabbed your ponytail and just yanked it.
Oh,
so
wow.
It was very odd for your head to kind of snap back. Nobody's there and you're not close enough to cages for an animal to grab it.
Yeah, so this wasn't like some light little barely hair tug. This was something pretty significant.
No, this was like a full-on yank.
Oh, wow.
And for the dogs to all stop barking at the same time and look at a corner, no growling, just everything stopped. That's what freaked me out. As I got older, just different dreams of things. So you start to wonder, okay, yes, the mind is energy and anything can happen. So, and you're like, well, maybe I was thinking about my grandmother or I'm thinking about somebody. I used to have dreams about my grandfather, then they stopped. Then when one of my grandmothers died in early 2000s, what was odd was that same night she died, my grandpa was in the closet looking for something for the funeral home, and the light started flickering as he was talking to her. Well, that same night, my parents were in their kitchen at their home talking. My dad and mom thought they saw somebody in the kitchen. When my dad went around to look, there was a puddle of water on the floor. Well, that night, I was living alone in an apartment. I went and laid down to bed. I was still awake because I remember looking at my computer, watching TV. Excuse me. And someone, like, they laid down on the bed next to me. And it scared me because I thought I didn't lock the door and someone snuck in. Well, I felt a hand on my shoulder. And then I started crying because I thought something bad was about to happen. And then I heard, it's okay. Everything's all right. I'm better. And when I kind of turned to look, I had this fear of, I don't know why, thinking some skeleton face. I don't know why I thought that. I kind of looked, but I couldn't tell. But when I felt like somebody got up off the bed, I saw the back of my grandmother's head in her
Oh, wow.
pink nightgown with the back of her curly hair. But there was a man there that helped her up. I didn't recognize him. So after that, like, just disappeared, I was like, well, maybe I'm asleep. I ran home and drove home crying because it was scared me. And then when I told my dad, he told me that was her brother who had died years before. I never knew him. But when I
Okay.
described him, he showed me a picture. That's who it was. I'm like, okay, well, where would he pop up? I didn't know him. Um, and then when my grandfather died, the day he died, my dad was at the house waiting for me, and he was in the bathroom. He heard footsteps in the hallway, so he called me out thinking it was me. He's like, hey, is that you? Excuse me. And he heard nothing, and he said, all right, Dad, I know it's you. Well, the footsteps stopped. So we were cleaning the house. I'd go over there alone, no problems. And one day I was in one of the rooms cleaning. I mean, I get migraines anyways, and I felt real weird. I started getting a migraine, started getting real sick.
Hmm.
For some reason, I thought of my grandfather. I said, "Hey, it's okay. Don't do this. I'm getting sick." And my dad wasn't there yet. He was on his way. It was as if someone took their hand and slammed it on a door, like they hit the door. So you
Oh,
just hear
wow.
this bam. So of course tears come down my eyes because it scared me. I can't see anything. I don't know what's going on. So I ran out of the house. Excuse me. Then finally got the nerve, came back in after calling my dad, you better hurry and get here. Something's
Mm-hmm.
wrong. Well, I looked around the house and pretty much everything had already been moved out. So there was nothing to fall. The TV was off. I was watching Wedding Singer. I remember that. There is no crashing in that sound or that movie.
Yeah.
My dad came. We walked the house. Excuse me, and nothing. So I was like, okay, that's I think my grandpa may have maybe, they say when you die, you return to the place you love
Yeah.
or where you're from. So we were wondering, did he come back and see me going through his stuff
And get upset
and,
by it.
maybe exactly trying to get my attention. And then he just finally was able to make that noise. I don't know. But it took me a while to be able to go back in the house alone because I would start to get headaches. The lights would flicker. One day the power went out when I was painting. So I went next door to the neighbors and I asked those guys, hey, is your power out? No. And I'm like, okay, something's going on. I'd go back home across over to the house, the power is back on. And it happened several times, but only when I was alone. So
Gotcha.
when me and my husband and my dad and stuff were working on the house, we would hear like papers rustling.
Hmm.
Well, he was living after my grandma died, he shut down the house. He only lived in one room. He had his office in there. So he would shuffle through papers and do his things. It sounded as if he was in there shuffling paper. One night we saw a shadow on a wall like somebody was walking from down the hall from the bedroom. And then when I said something, it just stopped. Well, my husband finally goes, I think someone's in the house. So we grabbed whatever we could. And when we went down there, you saw the shadow go back down the hallway and then disappear. So when we
Hmm.
went into the bedroom it came from, there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, Grandpa, we know you're upset. It's okay. Well, so that was like 2012. So maybe 3 years later, 3 years later, I had a dream. Um, I could still, because they smoked. So I could smell the smoke all of a sudden. I was walking through the garage into the house, and we were already living in the house, and we had remodeled and everything. I walk in from the garage into the dining room, and there's my grandpa, probably in his 40s because he had dark hair, and then my
Hmm.
grandma. sitting in what looked like their home again, like we had never changed anything. And I'm like, Grandpa? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, how are you? I'm like, this is weird. But my grandma never spoke. She just looked at me. And that was what was weird. I didn't understand that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you're okay? Yeah, I never felt better. I feel good. It's like, okay. I was like, so I didn't know what to say, but I could still smell the smoke. And I said, so, and I asked about particular family members. Hey, have you seen these family members? Can you tell me? And the expression on his face changed. He goes, I can't discuss that. And then I woke up. It was so real to me. I ran into the living room or the dining room and was flipping on all the lights, looking for, because sometimes the humidity in the house, you'll still get a smoke smell.
Yeah.
I couldn't smell it. I woke my husband up. He's like, what are you doing? I said, I don't know. I don't know. It
Yeah.
felt that real. Well, about a year later, I random dream we're at the old, what looked like the old Ridgemar Mall, the way it used to be with the circular staircase and things. I'm walking with my grandparents. My grandmother never spoke. She just looked straight ahead.
Hmm.
And I'm like, Grandpa? He goes, hey, before we start talking, you can't discuss or ask me questions. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, you can't ask me questions because I can't tell you. I'm like, so I can't even ask if you've seen so and so, or no, I'm not allowed to tell you. And I was like, okay, so why are we in a mall? And he was like, well, let's just walk. And then I woke up. I have not dreamt of him since. I don't know why, where those dreams came from. Because there's
Yeah.
particular family members that I've been trying to find for almost 12 years. Why I haven't dreamt of them. And I'm sure you'll know who I'm talking about, but I don't want to say. Um, and I guess I keep trying to find them, but I thought it was odd to pick up the same conversation in a dream. And then for my grandpa to tell me, hey, we can't discuss this. I can't tell you where
Yeah.
does that come from? Every
Right.
once in a while, we still hear things in the house. My kid has, when they were younger, has looked, behind me and laughed and smiled and said things and then go back and look at me and then keep looking behind me. So I'll say names of family members, which my child doesn't know, but all there's just we hear things, I still feel things, and we just now I can walk in the house in the dark, no problem. I'm over that. I think he finally found peace, but sometimes there's things that are different in the house. Things go missing, and I'm like
Ah.
having to have a conversation with the air. Okay, whoever took my brush, please put my brush back, or please put my keys. It's specific items that all of a sudden show up in the most random places that I'm like, I know I have ADD, but my ADD is not that bad. It's
Sure.
just the animals have reacted. They'll kind of look around. Um, so we just talk to them. We're like, hey, if this is so and so, hey, come talk to me in a dream. Come something. I don't know. It's been like that. Like I said, and, my brother, he can tell when some things are about. He can't say, "Oh, a volcano is going to happen tomorrow." No,
Yeah.
but there's certain events or something's going to happen to somebody. He's been able to say, what it is. Um, well, I remember. I don't know why this came to my mind. Years ago, we had a chocolate lab, and we didn't know
Ooh,
anything was
excuse
wrong
me.
with her. Sure, and my mom at 2 or 3 in the morning kept hearing a man yelling, cancer, it's cancer, it's cancer. She thought my dad was talking in his sleep. My mom was like, who is this? Well, not long after, we found out my dog had lung cancer.
Oh wow.
So just, it's like everybody is sensitive. My mom's aunt or cousin, whatever she is, claims she used to see her dead husband because she would
Mm-hmm.
just randomly go in like this. I don't want to call it a trance, but she would just kind of blank out and just stare.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she'd come back into the conversation, like you hit the pause button, and then she just started. We're like, what the heck was that? Oh, it's just Angel. He's bothering me, because that was her husband's name. Oh,
Okay.
he just passed through the room. We're like, where? Um, what's funny is my neighbor, so they're 10 years or so older than me. We both live in our grandparents' house, so we kind of grew up together. Their sister, there's two guys and a girl, their sister sees their grandfather in the home all the time.
In their home, not your home.
In their home, exactly. I said,
Yeah.
look, I'll keep mine over here.
And you
You
keep
keep
yours
yours
over
over
there.
there, because I don't need to see them coming over, smoking and drinking coffee together like good old times.
Yeah.
No way. But what's weird is when my grandfather died, their grandmother died like 2 days later, and they're buried across the way from each other in the cemetery. It's just kind of weird. I don't know. There's just a lot of things are just odd.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and
um,
listening to your stories, it sounds like a lot of things started when you were in your teens. Do you remember anything happening when you were younger, or was it all kind of after puberty?
just no, like the restaurant thing, hearing that woman's voice. Like I said, I was about 10. Now, when I was younger, I don't, I can't remember, because I still had my grandparents, I still had everybody.
Okay.
So, when I thought about things as I grew up, I'm like, you know what? When we were younger, I remember these weird things happening. That must have been maybe somebody trying to come through. We joke about it, but not remembering everything and not being sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. What I can remember are these, because they either scared me,
Right.
or I got so inquisitive, I wanted to know more, because I want answers to certain things that obviously I'm not allowed to have answers to.
Right.
And that's why I guess I believe even more for my grandfather to tell me that I can't tell you about these family members. You can't ask me questions. I can't tell you. Why would I have a dream about that? I just think
Right.
that's
Such an
weird.
odd thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I know
So,
that, we, without giving too much away, in your line of work,
yeah.
sometimes you can end up in unique places. Let's just say that,
Yeah. I
places that
will
not
say,
everybody else goes. Have you ended up somewhere
yes,
where something strange happened?
I have, while, let's say, documenting things.
Yeah.
Um, there are photos that I can't keep copies of because of what they are,
Right.
but there have been, if I take the same consecutive photo, which I have on certain things, the lighting doesn't change, there's no nothing, you will see what looks like an orb in particular things, like they're following us, and nothing changes, or it's over a particular item, or because of the nature of stuff, it fits the situation. And no one believed me until I showed them the photos, and then it freaked them out. I'm like, it
Interesting.
doesn't happen every time, but I'm like, that's why you don't talk in a negative way. You're always polite and respectful no matter
Hmm.
what your opinion is, because you never know who's around or listening.
You never know
So
who's
it's just
watching.
interesting. Exactly. So, yes, I guess I'm sure there's more. I'm just not thinking of,
That's okay.
but
Well, like I said, this is the whole point, kind of what we were talking about before the show started. The whole point is just to have conversations with normal people who have
yeah,
paranormal experiences. So those were
I
some
think it's cool.
really, really awesome stories. And I was just going to say, I guess, has any of your experiences either made you want to learn more about this subject or made you not want to learn more about the subject? So,
No, I'm always curious anyways. So I've always wanted to learn more. I take some things with a grain of salt. I watch all the shows, and I think a lot of it is bogus and set up, because how do you always find something, or you always, I've done where I've gone, even though a cemetery, they say it's not the best because there's no energy to attach to, or things like that. I've done it where I've gone out there with a recorder. I have taken photos at cemeteries, and over a particular family member's grave after they died, there were two butterflies that would come around for about a year,
Hmm.
two swallowtails. And what's interesting is it hasn't been every year, but almost every year of our child's birthday, at least one shows up at the house, the same type of butterfly. So it's interesting why we see that one. I took
Yeah.
pictures because why would those two butterflies be only on top of that grave and
Right.
allow us to pick them up and photograph them? And it was usually when I was alone is when it would happen. My husband has seen it before, but nobody else has. So I've tried, like I said, I've got photos with interesting things on top of graves, but it's usually someone that I know. Um,
Gotcha.
I've tried to in a house do, my mom gets on to me about doing it because some of, beliefs we grew up with, but I've done it trying to catch my grandparents or another family member, see if they'll speak to me.
Right.
I don't have anything, at least that I can hear. So I haven't done it in a long time because I don't want to invite the wrong thing in. I was never allowed to play with Ouija boards. I don't get into that.
Sure.
Because you never know what you're inviting there, something pretending. So I don't
Yeah.
mess with that.
Well, you have to take
But
cautions, right? You don't want to let
yes,
in, and you have to be responsible for your own energy, right? So
exactly. So, and that's what, if we are made up of energy, and if we only use 10% of our brain, as they say, I mean, think about all these possibilities of what we can unlock and do. So I get into that, if you want to call it conspiracy theory type of things, in a, lack of a better term, when
sure.
it comes to this stuff, I think of all the possibilities that may exist. I
Yeah.
don't think we're the only life form in this universe. You never know who's watching us, why, you know, it'll be
Well,
interesting to see.
I think it would be pretty arrogant to assume we're the only things out there.
Exactly, because if we exist, regardless of religious beliefs, if we exist, what else exists? Even if they're microorganisms, or are they
Right.
actually? Is it ET sitting out there? Is it duplicates of us
Sure.
existing in another world? You can get real weird with this stuff and
Yeah.
crazy, but yeah, I get interested in it. I like reading books. I don't get in too much to the, I can't think of his name, the guy with the mustache that has the, where he's in the auditorium saying, "Look at all the orbs and all." You know what I'm talking about?
Hmm. Mm-mm.
I can't. He says he's a medium,
Hmm.
John something maybe, but there's a photo of him in an old auditorium or something like that, or opera hall, where he's saying, "Look at all the orbs around me," and people are buying into that, but they forget the photography side of things.
Yeah.
You're in an old building with dust that
Right.
looks like dust. That's not, all these bubbles around you are not people coming to you. John something is his name, but coming to you, "Please talk to." Come on, I don't buy into that. Do I think people have
Yeah.
the ability? Yes, but I don't. I think those are the people that can. They know how to read someone. They know how to get the info out of you. They're
Right.
good at what they do. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why
There are
they're
definitely some
successful.
people I think that are basically doing body language reading. You know.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but I do believe there are people out there that can do it.
Hmm.
That can help you, that are mediums, that do take on, I don't want to call it possession because that's always negative, but they can encompass that spirit to help speak to you or help guide. Thing kind of like, ghost movie.
Right.
I think that stuff can happen. I've never seen it. So, but that doesn't mean I don't believe it's possible.
Sure. Well, there are lots of
So,
things we don't understand out there, right? So who knows?
exactly. Exactly. That's what makes it fun.
That's it. Well, I just wanted to thank you for coming on the show this week. I know it takes
Sure.
a lot of courage to share your stories.
No, anytime.
All
I always
right.
got
Well,
something.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. We
Okay.
can just hang out for a minute, okay?
All right. Thanks.
Absolutely.